Okay, so now we're back from part 2. We're in part 3 now. We're going to go into layout as quick as possible. So first thing we're going to do is I have added crystals. Be sure to check with your reference design on what crystals you need, where they go, what they're for, all that good stuff. Or maybe they're oscillators. There is a difference between crystals and oscillators. We're not going to get into that here, but just be aware of those things. Make sure you compile this. And you shouldn't have to do that again, but just in case. We're going to add new to project, PCB. Okay. And then now we're going to go to design and import changes. Okay. So what it's mad about, well, first off, let me rename this. So what it's mad about is compiling. It's trying to, let's just look at that again. Oh, there we go. Okay. Great. So what I was getting at was the problem it popped up was will sometimes occur if you don't compile the project. So be sure you do that. And I think I could be wrong, but I think it's helpful to have the PCB document named the same as the project. You should only have one PCB document per project. You can have a ton of schematics though, at least for our purposes. We're going to validate. We're going to execute. It's going to import all of this stuff, and it's just going to kind of dump it onto here. Okay. And layout's an interesting thing. My personal strategy for layout is put parts where I want them, and then kind of look at optimal places for things to go. Like I know the JTAG should be as close to the processor as I can get it. I know the crystal should be as close as I can get it. Voltage regulator can be a little further away. Barrel plug can be even further away. This guy doesn't. This is the INA 260 doesn't matter as much. This LED doesn't matter as much. So think about what needs to be close, what doesn't. Do you have any actual mechanical constraints to your size? Do you have mounting holes? Do you not? If so, what size? A good mounting hole size I've found is M2.5, but maybe you have something different. There's a lot of variables that go into layout. And I personally like to keep things as compact as possible, but maybe for your specific board, you're allowed to have a ton of real estate on it so you can spread things out. My point being is it is entirely certain things need to be placed, like decoupling caps, like these guys just say 3.3 volts in ground, so you can put them anywhere you want, and the layout won't know any better. It'll be happy. But I know that C2 here belongs to pin 18, so gosh darn it, I'm going to put C2 on pin 18 and C3 on pin 11, C4 on pin 50. I have to do that. Same thing with this decup. C1 here goes to pin 10 of this IC. Things like that. So there's a lot you need to keep in mind. Or like with the crystals, they have their own caps. The crystals need to be very close to the processor. So of course, just keep these things in mind. So actually the first thing we're going to do before we lay stuff out even is go to design rules. We need to set up our design rules. So let's start at the very top with clearance. All of these can be set to 6, which is great because that's smaller than what it already is. This is in mil, by the way, and we're just setting clearances between different things, how close things can be together. We want to set this up first so that we match it the whole way through. So clearance and then routing width. We can do a minimum width on both the top and bottom layer of 6 mil. And max width of kind of whatever you want. I'm going to do 17 just because you can, using the number 3 when, like the number 3 key when you're routing, you can cycle through these different sizes. So I'm 17 is kind of arbitrary, but whatever. You can look up trace width calculators, and that can help you determine the size trace you need based on the amount of current you expect to go through that trace. But for like signal level, 6 is fine. Let's see here. I'm looking at routing vias. We're gonna do via diameter 30, 30, 50, 30. So 30, 30. And then hole size is 15, 28, 15. Okay. And then solder mask expansion. We're going to allow 4 mil. That's correct. Paste mask expansion. We're going to allow 0. Yep. And then okay, we're going to call that good. There, hopefully your instructor will provide you with a set of rules that may not necessarily look like these, but it is important to do them. Apply those and hit OK. And look, a lot of that green went away because now green means bad. Green means we're breaking some rules. So I'm going to lay this out. I'm not going to talk for a minute, and then we can talk through it once I've done that. Quick interjection. We can click on one of the designators, find similar objects. Click OK. And then now I can set all of those to my preferred. So now they're all much smaller. Back to top. Concerning the layout of these crystals, or oscillators really, be sure to check with their data sheets on where they want their capacitors and things like that. Okay, so we've got a nice little layout here. If you click the number 3 on your keyboard, it'll go into 3D view. Whoop, whoop. So you can kind of look at the models you have here. Now, this up here for the voltage regulator is this whole chunk here. You need to go look at the data sheet for the chip you chose and look at the layout it requires you to do. It's going to involve you doing some goofy stuff with some power planes and all that good stuff, but you need to follow it verbatim. Okay. We're actually going to start by doing a board shape, because right now the board, if we go back to 3D view, the board is this whole thing. The whole thing is our board. So what we want to do is go to a mechanical layer. Here's your layers down here. By the way, just as an FYI, this top overlay layer, that's your silk screen layer. That's where you can write stuff on and make all your pretty pictures. So we're going to make a kind of goofy board shape, I think, just to show you something. So we're on mechanical layer. We're going to place a line. And what's our grid at, actually? View grids. Oh, just for the sake of this part, let's do a 50 mil. Okay. And let's do a point right here. And then that's fine. And then am I able to then go from here? I'm going to make a goofy arc shape. Okay. And then go back to a line. Then I'm going to come down like that. Actually, I'm going to come down right here. Go over straight. Oh, no, I actually did not want to do that part. And then let's go straight down, back in. Good enough. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so now we need to go through. That is a goofy shaped board. If you hold shift, you can select all these. Okay, so now we've selected all of them. Now go to board shape, design board shape, define from selected objects. So now we have a fantastically goofy board shape. It's pretty awesome. And you can make a rectangle. You could obviously, I mean, I think I just showed you sufficiently. You can do basically whatever shape you need to do. Okay. Now we're going to do a few things real quick, just to get you understanding what's going on. So let's start. So I am going to make this a 4-layer board. Does this need to be a 4-layer board? No. Under no circumstances does something this simple need to be a 4-layer board. The more layers you add, the more expensive it gets to manufacture. Currently, it's a 1-2-layer board. You have a top and a bottom layer of copper that you can add traces on, add planes on, whatever. But for those of you who happen to be producing more complex boards, I want to show you a kind of a good practice on doing a 4-layer board. So we're going to do that real quick. Again, I reiterate very strongly, this is a far too simple a board to be able to justify doing a 4-layer on. So please consult with people who, others, whether or not you really need to do a 4-layer. For the sake of this, we're going to. So go to Design, Layer Stack Manager. And so to bring up this, and we can see kind of, how our board is stacked up. What we're going to do is we're going to click, well, not there, I guess. Yep, click in the dielectric, insert layer above or below, doesn't matter. It's going to add 2 either way, and then add a signal layer. It's going to add 2 more layers for you on the inside, and that's it. Just Control S, and then close this. And now we have a 1, 2, 3, 4-layer board. Okay. And on layer 2, I'm going to create a very large ground plane. So how I do that, or rather, I'm sorry, this is layer 3, named layer 2. It's kind of confusing. How I do that is I go up here, place polygon plane. And then before I do anything, I make sure I'm on the right layer, which I am. And I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to give it a net. And I'm going to give it the ground net. Hit the pause button. And you can draw this however you want. Just try to get your whole board shape. This is a goofy board shape, so it might be hard to actually get it quite right. You can go all the way to the edge if you want to. I don't think there's any issue with that. In fact, how about right here, I do that. We're going to go an angle, come down, go over. Now I'm going to right click again, and it generates the plane. If we go back to the top layer, all of our parts are still there, so that layer is active. If we zoom in, we can see that these 2 ground pins on our barrel plug now are connected to our ground plane. And the way they did it, kind of goofy, right? It has this little crosshair. Well, those are thermal relief, and what they're for is for when you're soldering this thing. It's for heat transfer. So it's not really limiting the current because the resistance is so small there. And what we'd really care about in the case of a current fail is heat. And heat is caused by resistance in this case. So with such a low resistance, the size there doesn't matter so much. So really what we're doing there is we're eliminating the amount of thermal energy moving between this pin on the barrel plug and the rest of the plane. So when we're heating up this pin to solder to it, we don't have to first heat up this entire ground plane to solder to it. Rather, we can just heat up this area here, and these don't carry sufficient heat for the rest of this plane to really factor into that. So that's what those are there for. You can change that. In fact, we're going to change it on something over here, but it'll default to this, which is cool. And on we're going to do a similar thing on the 2-layer one, this brown layer. And so I'll do that real quick, but it's going to be a 3.3 volt plane. And what I'm getting at here is on a 4-layer board, you want to dedicate 2 layers to maybe not entirely, but almost entirely be ground and power planes. Okay, and now something cool we can do is go up to Tools, Polygon Pores, and we can shelve those two. And now they're still there. They'll still interact, but they go away. And so that we don't have to look at them now. And yeah. And what's cool is now on, for example, what's a good example? This particular pad will go to 3.3 volts. I can now just go either click that or do Control W. I still have a really, hang on, let's change the grid back to 5. 5 was good. So Control W and click the number 3. Let's get down to our 6 mil. Yep, there we go. You can keep cycling through the different sizes you set in the rules. Clicking the 3 key, hit the number 2 key. Oh, there's a via. I'm actually not sure how to change that, because I don't particularly like that via size. Let's see, not hole size. Routing vias, I want the minimum, or rather, well, minimum be 10. Nope, no, minimum be 20. 20, and then 10, and then 10. And you have to make sure that the board shop you're going to get this thing made at can do whatever it is you're asking it to do. Okay, so I click that, hit the number 2 key. Now it drops via of the size I want, and that via will connect to the 3.3 volt plane underneath it. So that's pretty cool. Okay. And now you just spend time connecting things. Use top layer traces, bottom layer traces, whatever you need to do. Up here is the only picky part. You do need to refer to, again, the device's data sheet to make sure you lay it out according to that. This, I know, uses a lot of planes instead of traces, so just be conscientious of that. Something we're going to do right here for the VN is we're first going to click each of these pads, okay? And we're going to check the relief box. Remember, we just talked about thermal relief. And maybe I have to do this one at a time. Yep. Click the little ellipsis. Maybe. There we go. And whoops, not no connect, direct connect. I don't want it to do a thermal relief at all. I'm going to do that for all 3 of them. And the reason I'm doing that there is just because I've used this part before. I know what a pain it is to work around this. And trying to do a plane here, since this is a main power in, trying to do a plane here and still allow these to have thermal relief just does not work. So I'm going to do a VN plane here. And we're just going to go like this and this. And voila. Look at that. They're just basically painted on there. And see, this might not be the best way to do this because now I've removed those pins. So when I go to solder this, it's just going to be a wall of solder across that. And that can get concerning for someone populating your board. So maybe that's not the best choice. Maybe I should, let's see what other options we have. Well, we really only have relief connect. We could do 2 conductors. Let's try that. And then now an important thing to know is tools, polygon pores. Either report all or report selected. I usually just click all. Okay, see, I don't like that either. So, but basically for this, you just end up going to look at the device's data sheet and making conclusions from there. One other thing we're going to do, let's see, is we're going to put ground planes around each of our oscillators. This is something you should definitely do. Okay, and then we'd of course do it for the other one as well. I'm going to stop the video for a bit. I'm going to finish routing all of this, and then we'll come back and look at it. But I think you know the basics well enough at this point to get going. Basically, just place things as best as you can, and then just get to routing. I guess as one final thing, doing vias midway through a path is fairly straightforward. If we go Control W, and let's put a via there, and then I'm going to right click, get out of that. And let's say there was an obstacle here for whatever reason. I can switch to the bottom layer, Control W, and maybe I need to go over here for whatever reason. Hit the number 2 again, go back to the top layer, and finish it out. And of course, since these are all SMD pads, you can't connect a bottom layer trace directly to an SMD pad. So you can to a through hole, like this ground pad, for example, but you can't to an SMD pad. So you do need to come back up to the top and do a top layer trace over to it. Okay. Yeah. I'll see you guys on the other side. And this isn't, I mean, if you're following along, this is kind of an assignment for you. If you have the time to go through and route and kind of get comfortable with it, get used to it. It's a good practice.